And I say, in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Daddy, let's do this.
Live from the Liar's Lair. It's the Disinformed Podcast. I'm Shane.
I'm John.
And I'm Michael.
We are happy to welcome you here to episode 1, where the music is just too damn loud. But
the rent is too damn high.
And our penises are too damn small.
But this way, we're not going to get sued when 3 people listen to the podcast.
Which is important.
Mm-hmm.
We want to start off on the right foot.
Speaking of the right foot, do you have a sponsor for the episode?
For this episode,
Yeah.
no. We do not have any sponsors. No, I mean,
inside the episode already.
Yes, I mean, those are the ones we will be recording later, not
Yeah.
these ones. So,
What else do we need to say in an intro?
what we're saying is we had put in introductory music to our, initial episodes here, and we were imbeciles because we didn't clear them first, and so now, to prevent any further litigation in the future, we are going to be, introing the shows this way. So this is your first foray, and congratulations. Technically, it's our first foray as well. So this is episode 1, Dixieland Jazz.
If you like dicks, you're in for a treat.
This is the land of them. The land of the dicks.
Yeah, essentially what you're saying is we're taking all of the walkie-talkies, or we're taking all the pistols out of the movie and replacing them with walkie-talkies.
I mean, if you want to be an extraterrestrial, John, we can. Michael, are you here?
I am.
You're presenting this episode,
Yeah,
so you got a lot to say.
Yeah,
Well,
why don't
yes,
you
I
give a
do.
director's cut. Like, what was going through your head when you recorded this?
I guess sheer terror. Because I didn't know anything about it. Yeah, this is like some commentary or something.
In space, no one will hear you podcast.
Is it
Ooh,
true that
I like
Barbara
it.
Streisand endorsed the episode?
I wish.
No. This is episode 1. So, for those who are not quite, hep to the lingo here because you haven't been here before, congratulations. We haven't been here before.
Yeah.
But, so we'll throw this at Mike and let him give you kind of the idea or what germinated, here to cause this little podcast to happen.
Yeah, so essentially one day I was sitting at work. I work at a pizza shop, and the owner came up to me and told me that Little Caesars uses liquid cheese for their mozzarella. And I'm like, well, he knows what he's talking about. He runs a pizza shop, so why not? I believed it. And I was talking to another friend a couple days later, and I mentioned that, and he's like, why? That makes no sense. I'm like, shoot, yeah. And I just believed the store owner because he had authority.
Mm.
He sounded like he knew what he was talking about.
It's a
And I
man
looked
that
it up.
knows cheese.
Yeah, exactly.
Obviously.
Is this what Pizzagate is, actually?
No. Well,
I had one of those on my amplifier a couple of years ago. It was the Cheesegate, actually. It was,
okay, yeah, because I can't legally talk about Pizzagate.
but you can. It's just in the Mueller report. It's going to come out one way or the other. And that is a cheesy joke, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh,
Congratulations.
so-
Yep. There's
What was that, 30
pun number 1.
1 minute, 45 seconds.
Yeah, like 2.5 minutes.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of puns.
Already
I'm sorry.
problematic because we were going on Romani time.
Yep. That's what I'm here for. I am the Punisher. So that's... All right, anyway.
But
yeah,
So
so-
you wanted to sort of like call his credulity in question going forward. It was like, how could you lie to me so bald-facedly?
Yeah. So just because he said it with authority, I believed him. And I realized that happens a lot where, you might have heard something like on a news show or, someone mentioned in passing and you're like, well, they sound like they know what they're talking about. Cool.
It's like that the science experiment where they would, have people submit other people to torture in another room.
Oh,
and essentially just because there is someone in the room telling you that, yes, you need to keep hitting that button, even though you hear someone audibly screaming on the other side of the glass, they just have to keep running. It's,
I can't remember the name of
it's
that.
like a facet of Operation Paperclip or something, but no, it's not. I'm just kidding.
And we're full circle.
Those damn German geneticists. No one can trust them.
It's like Your Pretty Face is Going to Hell. Have you seen it?
Oh, no.
I said that
Henry
to a girl,
Zabrowski's character as
2
the
years
demon,
ago.
and I think it's the first episode is whipping one of the guys, whipping one of the people that's in hell, and he's not doing a really good job because he's really overweight. And he's kind of huffing. He's like, "Oh man, I'm really tired. I need a break." And the guy's like, "Just hand me the whip. I'll whip and I'll scream." And then he screams and then he whips him. And Henry's like, "Hey, you have to be convincing if you're going to give me this break. You have to whip." Whip it. Anyway.
a good pull. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why I wanted to start this podcast, because I feel like you can talk about any sort of topic. You don't even really have to be super educated in it, but as long as you say it with enough conviction, you bullshit it enough, like, people will believe you. Yeah. So that's what we're going to do here. I'm going to talk about the history of Dixieland jazz.
Now, Dix, where we're putting the emphasis on that, right?
Dixieland.
Dixieland jazz.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Dix, period, capital E, land.
You say that in your announcer voice?
Dixieland.
Beautiful. So, yeah, I'm going to talk about Dixieland history, and I'm going to slip in a couple of lies.
Before we really get started, though, I have something that's very important to talk about. There is an actual squatty potty in this house.
There is.
And I need to...
Shut up.
Begins.
Fucking dogs. So what... I mean, do you feel like you really reach full evacuation by, throwing your knees up at your chest?
If anything, it's very zen.
To sit like you're an idiot.
Sometimes I feel like it actually does work.
Oh,
and
other
times
it does. I've done research on this.
Yeah, I have one too.
So you've had like a woman, lay down in front of your toilet and you just put your feet up on her and then shit.
Okay, but I will say...
that wasn't research, that was experimenting.
I was like, I thought we all did that.
I will say that I weigh myself when I wake up in the morning, and most times after using Squatty Potty, I'll weigh myself again, and it's usually consistently about a pound. So...
you're making a post hoc fallacy there, John. I'm just going to throw that out. I washed my car and it started raining, and the two don't necessarily always correlate. You could lose a pound, just by sweating.
Let's circle back here.
Okay.
I do think it works.
Okay.
But even if it didn't work, I feel more relaxed when I use it.
Okay.
I feel it's a lazier way to shit, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, because it doesn't overtax your sphincter. I think that's the muscle.
Some of us like to overtax
in our days
sphincter,
these trying times, do you really
want to
overwork your sphincter?
Yeah.
This episode has been brought to you, by the way, by Squatty Potty. Never too early to try.
Yeah. I was going to say it's actually brought to you by Benoit balls, the more appropriate way to tax your sphincter than just shitting normally.
That's how you get sponsors, right? You just
throw out random
ads. It and pretend like you have it.
And then Wesley Willis it afterwards. Polaroid. See what develops. The general principle of what we're trying to do here is we are going to present a topic, one that hopefully one of the three of us is fairly well informed on. They will then sort of attempt to cloy a few lies, presumably 3 is the what we're...
3 around.
Okay. Yeah. And then, as the story is being told or as the topic is being explained or fully fleshed out, they will leaven in or work in a few of those lies so that the other 2 co-hosts are then trying to ferret out what is the lie, what is the disinformation amongst the real information. So that's what we're trying to do here, for those of you who are not aware.
Mm-hmm. I think when I was talking to Mike, it's kind of adjacent to a bit on Reply All called Yes, Yes, No. Except it's not with tweets. And in Yes, Yes, No, they're not planting lies.
And for those of us that are on the old Smodcast network as well, Tell 'em Steve Days has something like this. It's called a 1 True 3, where they will tell, a couple of stories where there are 3 things that they throw out, and only one of them is actually true. The other 2 are lies. So essentially, you have to pick out which is the correct story. So yeah, it's a time-old tale of people just trying to get one over on their friends.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what we're here for.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. So then I'll say my bit, and then you guys can ask clarification questions. Obviously, if I say a word wrong or something doesn't make sense, you can ask like, "Hey, what do you mean by that?" And then at the end, you'll have a couple of questions or something like that to try and flesh out, trying to catch me in the act of lying.
Okay. And by and large, what we're really trying to do is just make one another crack up and be entertaining.
Yeah.
So much like Who's Lying, the points don't matter and no one really wins.
Bitch.
Yes!
You're welcome. I got there before
I was there. I just didn't want to go there.
Yep.
Okay.
I will be the Drew Carey of this group. Congratulations. I'm the only fat man in the room, so I just get to play.
I was going to say, Drew Carey has... No, he's not bald.
No, but he's a fat guy. So that's the closest correlation I could make.
It sounds legit.
I don't think anyone needs to be Drew Carey. I think we can just be our own people.
I want to be Drew Carey. He's a WWE Hall of Famer, John.
Wait.
What?
I feel like that's an episode for another time.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on.
Almost got me there.
No, that is actually a thing. I'm sorry. I'm just going to spoil that up front. He is actually in the Hall of Fame for the World Wrestling Entertainment.
So, if we get to episode 4.
Drew Carey. Or the WWE Hall of Fame.
Ooh.
That would be good.
That'd be interesting. Okay, moving on.
So, Dixieland started around the turn of the 20th century. Has a lot of musical influences.
Now, John, the 20th century.
For those who don't know, it's the XX century. So it's not as great as the 30th century.
But, it also means, we're talking about the...
I see where you're at.
We're talking about the 1900s. And I know that's confusing because you go, 19 to 20, and it's somewhat discongruous to your mental state.
I may not have rhythm. However, I can count.
I can has counts.
2 to 4, right?
Yes.
Counts 4. Oh.
Unfortunately, in jazz, it's way more than 4, and they play all the notes.
They do play all the notes.
They do.
Not them cowboy chords.
So some of the influences that they have are like ragtime, military brass bands, actually. So like marching bands and stuff. Blues, gospel, African tribal beats. If it existed at around the turn of the century, it probably influenced Dixieland at some point or another. Okay.
So there's a lot of anguish that informs this music, is what we're trying to get to.
Yes.
Simmering underneath all of this is just suppression, chains, and woe.
Yeah. Actually, that kind of is a good description of it. So we have, for instrumentation, it's fairly specific.
Okay.
We got a trumpet or a cornet. They play the melody. It's pretty much, they set the sort of like line that everyone's going to play around.
Okay.
Okay, then you have the clarinet, who pretty much just improvises on that melody, that bass line melody. You got a tuba, so that actually is where the marching band comes in. You have the tuba that plays the bass line. Okay. Then you have the trombone, who's only really there to play sound effects, like smears or glisses. So like the... Yeah. Literally just contextual noises.
Okay.
Then you have the piano and a banjo. I almost said banjo.
Banjo.
Yeah.
Bon Jovi.
The banjo.
The banjo, where the squatty potty is utilized as a slide.
They play the chords, and the drum keeps a beat. Pretty easy.
Okay.
One of the main differences between Dixieland and like just other forms of jazz is that it's collective improvisation. So instead of just you have some people play like an already written down melody or harmonies or whatever, everyone is actually playing around what the one trumpet or the cornet is.
So kind of counter melodies.
Yeah, so everyone is improvising at the same time. Okay. So how most pieces are written, they start with a simple melody. The trumpet plays something like just very simple, very like almost 4 chords or something like that.
Okay.
And then people will start improvising around it. Once they find what works, what sounds good, then they'll take that and modify the melody to fit, right? They'll keep doing this where they keep building upon these simple melodies and these improvisations until eventually when they come up with the final product, it doesn't sound anything like the original, and it's very complex. Everything is very complicated and stuff. But it's still something that everyone can improv over.
So we'll call the structure is very much like making a cake. You will start out with whatever the foundation is, and then you layer on whatever cream you want to on the top. If you want to continue and get even further down the rabbit hole, another layer of cake, more stuff on top of that. But essentially the structure's the same.
Yeah.
You're just making it a little bit different with dressing it up and things that dance around what the main, substance is.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
I do metaphor. That's what I do.
Hey, if it helps describe it, that's all
That's all I'm here for.
Yeah. All right, so a little bit of history now. So Nashville was the birthplace of Dixieland, right? As it was a musical melting pot. So...
Like fondue.
Yes. So we had...
Liquid cheese.
Yeah, we had different cheeses, right? So we had European immigrants from like Germans, Irish. They brought their musical traditions from their culture. From
they're
where
like
they
mozzarella.
Yeah.
And that's where we get tuba and lederhosen. Germans.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I didn't mention that. Everyone has to wear lederhosen when they play. It's a...
Of course,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah. No.
Line number 1. Done. Picked it.
No.
Easy shit.
Okay, yeah, so... Shoot, I lost... Okay. I lost my place because I had to talk about the lederhosen there.
Didn't we all?
So we had the European immigrants. We had Afro-Creole, which is pretty much their culture group. That Creole is a term that describes people that were of French or Spanish descent that were born in the Americas. Okay, so like pretty much people that were French or Spanish and were also black.
And if you're a fan of voodoo, get down it.
Yes.
I don't
And then just general African-American culture, just all those sort of cultures together. Okay. Now, obviously this wasn't as enlightened times as it is today, so there was a lot of racism, obviously, because it's any time other than today. But the birthplace actually had relatively, and I say relatively because obviously, relatively little racial segregation. So instead of it being very separate, everyone was pretty much, the article I read said cheek to jowl, which I thought was a little odd of a statement.
Okay.
But everyone was pretty much living together. And so because of that, musical ideas were able to flow. Styles were able to flow back and forth. Okay.
Dancing cheek to cheek, as it were.
Yes.
Okay,
I wonder
I
if
got
it was a tongue-in-cheek reference to that.
Hopefully. It's very cheeky.
Because that would be
well done.
Great. So the original bands included brass and wind instruments because of their availability. Because from pretty much Civil War had a lot of marching bands, like on either side of the troops or whatever. There was always entertainment. There was always bands trying to signal and stuff. So there was a large availability of brass and wind instruments in this area.
And if you have, broken weaponry, you just melt that down and just make yourself a tuba.
Yeah. Makes sense.
It's reasonable.
Very Game of Thrones approach.
Instead of throne, it's a tuba made out of...
It's from the swords of my enemies we've melted down to make tuber. Hand me a tuber, I'll get you something out of it. All right.
Yeah.
What can I use you for? So anyway, we got these rats and the tubas and the... So, broad proliferation of wind instruments, easier to make.
Yes, easier to make, a lot more. Pretty much anyone and everyone had access to these, so anyone could pick up an instrument and play it. So whenever there were marching bands that were always having festivals, funerals, any sort of like cultural thing, other people would either be there to pick up on those styles and then they would be able to play it themselves. But since they weren't constrained by those traditions, they can experiment with them. And because that musical ideas traveled, it pretty much led to a lot of just proliferation, put it pretty nicely. Then also, starting in around 1897, the city's red light district, it was called Storyville, pretty much was developed and opened up. And that gave a lot more musicians opportunities to play indoors instead of just out on the streets. Especially because you couldn't really get a marching band into a house to perform, right? So it allowed people that didn't necessarily have as many opportunities to play, instead of just like jamming out on the street, they were able to play inside. And because they were able to play inside, they were able to use different instruments like a piano. So because of that, they were able to introduce like ragtime elements into this. So ragtime was already added to the dozens of other musical influences that they were, getting, right? Let's see. Now, towards the 1910s, Dixieland started migrating up the Mississippi River to places like Memphis, St. Louis, and Chicago.
Mostly through the Underground Railroad.
Yes, exactly. It was actually built...
Entirely disparate time frames. We were fine.
It was actually built underneath the Mississippi River.
Harriet Tubman started ragtime, as we all know.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Suffragettes around the world, we know.
Yes.
I'm so lost.
John is just like doe-eyed, staring in the middle distance now, like, where?
Staring into infinity. What's a river?
What? No, I know.
You said people of color?
Huh?
and
problematic.
All right. Let's
Keeping
see.
it.
Let's see how many people that we can upset or offend.
So we'll change the name to
There
the
are
Alienist Podcast immediately.
3 listeners right now, and they're us.
I don't know if I would really listen.
Well, there's that one
And
guy.
I'm not going to listen.
I think it's the guy in Azerbaijan right now who's listening, or Soviet Georgia, that might be just picking this up. On
Yeah, I
this.
reckon they do have good ideas on that Bad podcast.
That is neither an Azerbaijani or Soviet Georgia accent.
No, everyone from Georgia sounds like that.
Oh, everyone from Georgia. Okay, so it's that.
The country, not the state, right?
Both.
I was told that my, cousin came over. We make the kiss and have the fun.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Wouldst thou care to play my banjo? I have one here for all purposes. Ba-da-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun. God, okay.
So, speaking of that banjo, one pretty much
Great
artists and
segue,
stuff
by the way. I'm
moved
sorry.
to-
I'm not going to let that one pass us by. That was a marvelous segue.
I tried.
You did it excellently.
So the style started changing from once it started spreading, because that's what people do. Once it got to Chicago, okay, that's when some other instruments were switched out. The tuba was replaced with a bass, string bass. Banjo was replaced with a guitar, and then someone was like, let's take a sax and put it in as well. And that's pretty much kind of like, as it evolved, it turned into the big band jazz of like the 30s and 40s.
Because who doesn't want a little sax?
Yeah, right?
Dirty sax as well.
Ooh. I mean, that's honestly the only kind of sax I listen to.
I normally prefer sax on the beach, but it's a little strong depending upon, the wind picks up.
I'm not a big fan of sand. Just everywhere. So.
Okay, so now you're Hayden Christensen. Well done. So that's
just don't like
sand.
sand.
It's just coarse and it gets everywhere. Natalie Portman's in front of me, but I'm bitching about this.
Angst.
Stay with us, Watkins. Stay with us.
oh,
Come on.
I'm here.
Speaking of Chicago, there was actually a band that had migrated from the heart of Dixieland to Chicago, and they were actually the first band to record a jazz song. Okay, they were called the Original Dixieland Jazz, spelled Jass, band, which it was later renamed, later changed to Jazz with 2 Z's. Apparently, that was one way that people spelled jazz back then.
Or it was short for Jasperilla.
Probably.
Yes.
That seems more reasonable.
Yes.
I don't know what that is.
That's not a thing.
It's like a jazzy style of sarsaparilla.
Or it's Jassafras, I think was actually what.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
Okay.
So the original 5 members, which were all white, I just want to specify that.
It's important to note because, typically most music is co-opted by, Caucasians.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a great band name, actually, co-opted by Caucasians. I think is, perfect going forward. But, I mean, the blues resurgence in particular happened predominantly because a lot of Brits decided they really enjoyed, American folk music and then American jazz music, and let's start making our own. But they just play all the classics, and then you get Led Zeppelin. Or Cream, or any of the other things,
And a great transition to that, who brought jazz to England? This band, actually.
Oh,
yes.
Jasperilla.
So, no. The original Dixieland Jazz Band.
Or the Jazz Band, as we know.
Yes. So, they were brought together by a cornetist named Nick LaRocca. They set up shop in Chicago, attracting crowds with their lively tempos and their outlandish stage antics, like the trombonist would play with his foot.
Like you do.
I know. It was very risque back in the day.
That's how you get a little English on it.
I like it. Sorry, when you said English, I was like, oh, we're talking about England. But then I saw your hand. His hand made the turning, which is what the term is for pool, English in a bowl.
Yeah.
Look at me.
Behold.
No, okay.
The dogs are barking again.
Yes.
And by that, I do not mean that my feet are somewhat tired after a long day of exertion. The literal dogs are barking.
Let's see here. Yes.
So the jazz band brought the stuff across the pond because, there's all of this pomp and circumstance, and they're throwing a little bit of gimmick at you with the music as well.
Yeah.
So then their fame or notoriety led them to other places because, I want to see this guy that plays with his feet.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they started in Chicago. They eventually later moved to New York. And it was there that they recorded their first, I guess, record called Livery Stable Blues, or alternatively Barnyard Blues. And they called it that because at several times in the actual recording, they have, I think, a trombone makes a donkey noise, a donkey braying, and the clarinet makes a bunch of squeaking noises. More so than usual.
Record saying.
I think that was actually animal sounds.
Okay.
And the reason why they were they were the ones that pretty much popularized jazz and spread it out to just Chicago or pretty much up and down the Mississippi.
Now, did this happen by riverboat?
That actually is how some musicians like migrated to Memphis and St. Louis by playing on
it's
river
an easy
boats.
gig, I was saying, it's, one, you get a little income while you're doing it, and then it's a great way to relocate. It's just, hey, we're going to take the barge up the river, and then there you are.
Yeah.
Akin to how a lot of the other stuff, they tend to have a lot of parades in New Orleans and down in the good old Creole sector, so, okay, I got you.
Cool.
Yeah.
The last thing I'll say is kind of a little bit of controversy. So in his later years, La Roca, he spent pretty much the latter part of his life saying that his band were the creators of jazz, which is not true. But he would fiercely defend that and pretty much get in.
Well, it's like the guy who created boy bands, right? I'm the first one who put a proliferation of, attractive-looking boys together and had them sing songs.
Yeah, that was Boys to Men, right?
Like Kanye tweeting, "I don't need a manager anymore. I can't be managed."
Yeah, actually, I would say that would be the the 40s.
I don't need people to tell me about jazz. I created jazz.
Yes,
but I mean, also that is it De Roca?
No,
La Roca. Wait, we're talking about Rage
La
Against
Roca.
the Machines.
I was going to say because then his great grandson Zach went on to found Rage Against the Machine.
Fuck you! I won't do you tell me, Shane.
So
that's just another bomb track, John. Apparently, that's son of a bad thing.
Goodness.
Lights out. Grill radio.
So I guess
Shut up.
The last thing I'll really say is that their importance wasn't necessarily their music or even their controversy. It was more that they just helped popularize jazz that no one really knows about them unless you...
They spread the gospel.
They're kind of the lightning rod for the medium, where it's it's just diffused everywhere. They are the thing that sort of polarizes and gets everybody there in order to allow them access to it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah. So that was pretty much it. That was all I really wanted to say about it.
The Dixieland Jazz Sass Frass Band.
Yes.
Yeah.
Jazzafrass.
Jazzafrass up your ass, I think. That was their initial, pull quote.
So, I actually have only 2 lies in there. Yes, only 2
I hope that you
Can I do
demarked
the
them
stab
in
without
red.
asking
Yeah,
any
please.
questions?
Yeah.
Is one of the lies the name of the album?
No.
Fuck. That's
Well, because, a livery is actually a thing, so, yeah.
I had my annual. I'm okay. My livery is fine.
Listen, I've called you an alcoholic for years. We've all known this. So it's just...
Listen.
You're shaking like a Parkinson's patient right now.
Well, that's why
just
I'm
because
going to
you
go
haven't
ahead. They
gotten
can't
hit.
see the shaking. All they can hear is the drinking.
I was like... The amount of stimulants and depressants being consumed in this room, because I'm rocking the coffee, you're rocking the alcohol, and then Mike's got the heroin.
I got amphetamines in my bag. If anyone wants them, we can.
Oh, we're gonna juice this party up right quick. Okay,
So that's actually their 3rd album title. I've got the amphetamines in my bag.
Okay, guested by Lead Belly.
I used up one of the guesses, so I guess.
So we're taking multiple stabs at this, presumably.
We're trying to do
we get
3?
2 guesses if there's 2 lies.
Yeah, I would say that you both would get, just to make it easy, 3 guesses apiece, and you can ask questions. You can probably, I'll just arbitrarily say you can ask 3 in-depth questions.
Okay.
And I will try my best, and I will say if I don't know the answer, because I won't add a secondary lie to that.
Okay. My first guess is the clarinet is not an instrument.
No, it is actually an instrument. But
Were
also...
you really just trying to outdo my shitty guess?
Yes, I just wanted to get under you if I could. So,
while it is not only an instrument, it was also an instrument that was part of Dixieland Jazz.
Yes.
Yes.
And then later the name of a famed manager in professional wrestling.
I feel like
Jim Cornette.
I feel like we've just been doing way too much Bloodborne, Sekiro, Dark Souls things that I just want to stab and fail.
I just saw you die flash
that
across
guy
the bottom
didn't
of my life
play with
right
his
now.
feet.
No.
Yes, as far as I'm aware. I mean, it's not difficult to... I played trombone back in the day. It's not difficult to play with.
You can just prop it up and move it. It's,
Yeah,
Like how Kurt Cobain shot himself with a shotgun.
I thought
a
Courtney
little
Love was standing
easier,
in front
a
of
little
him.
bit
That's how
easier
that
to
happened.
do than the shotgun.
So was that a guess?
That was a guess.
All right, let's go.
That's my second guess.
That's it. Good God! Wow, we took bad swings with this, John.
You can ask a little bit of questions if you want. I can rehash something.
I think I'm churning my brain to get to kind of some of these. I feel like you really cloyed what you're hiding here very well, insofar as like there's enough information imparted that it's very easy to just pop a little nugget and then hide it behind some other things. So
intricate.
Yes.
Yeah.
How
about we take one more stab each?
Okay.
No clarification.
All right.
Because what you're saying, I think, holds up. I don't even know where to start asking a clarifying question.
Yeah.
So how about we make 2 ridiculous things, and then we get the sweet, sweet release of truth.
Okay. That sounds good to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
You go ahead.
The first thing that came is the controversy is contrived. That is going to be my lie, is that they did not actually claim that they invented jazz.
He did.
Okay.
So he's a piece of shit through and through history.
Yeah, and I didn't really add to it, but he also made a lot of racist remarks in his later years as well.
I mean, who hasn't?
Yeah, exactly.
Really? Particularly from that time frame, and for the individuals who are co-opting other people's cultures, because, I mean, you know, a lot of the folk music and Africanized things that manage to infuse their way in, it's laughable that individuals start sort of like attempting to claim that it's like, oh no.
Yeah,
if you had rhythm involved in music that was not like a polka waltz, like dun, 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 any alternate rhythm patterns are not quite Caucasian in general, certainly not Anglican. So yeah, that just laugh at that.
Yeah. You say the name of the place is Storyland?
Storyville is the name of the red light district.
That's the lie.
No. You were close, though.
Fuck.
So Storyville is the name of a red light city district in a city.
Okay. That is not where the musics took place then.
No, Storyville... Well, okay.
All right, so I think we're there.
Yes, I think we've danced all around it well
with
enough.
With that, I will say that Storyville is the red light district in New Orleans. New Orleans is the birthplace of Dixieland.
Okay.
I kept trying to look up things that talked about the various cultures. I wanted to find mention of, like, the Cajun culture.
Okay.
Like, that sort of, like, idea. But I couldn't find anything, so I didn't want to dig too deep into it because I spent a lot more time reading about this than I probably should have.
Okay.
That's fair.
But, well, you know, it's fun because you do need to be able to kind of, like, improvise and catch on some things if we start actually, like, you know, holding your feet to the fire.
Yeah, exactly.
Which requires intellect greater than both of ours, apparently.
Yeah.
It's all right. The other one, I'm glad that I got this passed, because it makes sense. I thought in the head of, like, you guys you write music, you produce music. The harmonies are always simple. They don't get complex. They don't start with something easy and then they just, like, keep adding to it and working with it or whatever. Like, one of the main things about Dixieland is that it is very simple melodies that people just play around.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't play something, find it's nice, and then they go back to the drawing board and play with that, and then they don't do these iterations and stuff. It's just simple all the way through.
Oh, okay.
Most pieces are just easy melodies, easy harmonies.
Okay, I think we're probably working on improvisational jazz and playing off of that as the foundation, and so it's what we're associated it with.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
But
that was well done.
Yeah. I feel stupid.
So what you're saying is you just wanted to jazzercise it a bit.
Yeah. Actually,
okay.
Make it way more complicated than it needed to be.
So this portion of the podcast is brought to you by Richard Simmons and the Jazzercise / Deal Meal plan.
Yeah.
If you are interested in hitting the flux capacitor and floating back to the mid '80s to watch people in purple unitards shaking their flubber all over the place, you can do so.
Yeah.
I mean, if you manage to find a strange time machine just hanging out in the back corner of a coffee shop that you are working at, trying to get a $5 hamburger, and you're just going to go through a rabbit hole and decide whether or not you want to try to save Kennedy from being assassinated because you teach high school English, then this might be the way for you to go. So, Richard Simmons, Deal a Meal, Jazzercise. It's going to melt those pounds away as you get some fun exercise in day to day, hearing the heppest of tunes that are derivations of Dixieland jazz, so that you can get your dicks engaged. Dixieland.
I think that does it. I don't know how you beat funny jazz in a Richard Simmons spot.
I don't know, unless you've got a different kind of afro being brought in. But
so what do we? So next time we're doing your topic.
Yes, we'll spring it. So if you're gonna plan in on plan in. Dear Lord, I had a series of small strokes there. I'm sorry. Here we go. Round 7. If you plan on tuning in next time, we'll tempt you with a little a soupçon of what's coming up. We are going to discuss the most scintillating of all topics, LaVeyan Satanism.
Yes.
Which requires a payment plan, from what I understand. It's
Yes.
like Scientology, they just have less money.
Yeah, less money, extra steps.
And no John Travolta.
Less steps.
No John Travolta.
No John Travolta.
Nah, you lost me there.
I mean, his works are from hell, but he's not affiliated with the devil. It's different. And that is going to conclude this edition of the Disinformed Podcast. We sincerely appreciate you taking some time to listen to us, and we hope that you enjoyed the episode as much as we did recording it. Please do us a favor, float over to your preferred podcast provider app and subscribe to us there. And if you're so inclined, you can even leave us a review. It immensely helps to get our name out there, and it also lets us know what you feel about how we're doing here. If you're enjoying the show, as we most certainly are. If you're looking to connect with us on social networking as well, you can find us on Instagram at Disinformed Podcast. We are on Facebook.com/Disinformed Podcast and on Twitter at Disinformed Pod. But that will do it for all of us here at the Disinformed Podcast. I'm Shane.
I'm John.
And I'm Michael.
Thanks for coming, everyone. Don't worry, we'll clean it up.